Every year, millions of gardeners reach for chemical rooting powders, gels, and liquids, believing that without these products, plants simply cannot grow new roots. We've been trained to think that propagation needs a bottle, a brand name, and a promise of instant success. But here's a question almost no one ever stops to ask: if chemicals are so essential, how did plants survive, multiply, and spread across the entire earth long before humans ever invented them? Long before gardening stores existed, long before laboratories, long before marketing words like fast and guaranteed, plants were already cloning themselves perfectly. Forests expanded. Branches fell, touched soil, and became new trees. Entire ecosystems propagated endlessly, without a single drop of synthetic rooting hormone. That fact alone should force us to pause and rethink everything we've been taught. What if the strongest rooting hormone has never been sold in a store? What if it already exists inside the plant itself, silently waiting for the right conditions to activate? The uncomfortable truth is this: many chemical rooting products don't actually create strong roots. They force quick, shallow growth that looks successful in the short term but weakens the plant's future. Natural propagation, on the other hand, triggers a survival response. It pushes the plant to build deeper, stronger, more intelligent root systems designed to last. This method doesn't just help a cutting survive, it prepares it to thrive for years. So why don't most gardeners know about this? Why is this knowledge rarely taught and almost never promoted? Because it can't be bottled, branded, or sold. And in this video, you're going to uncover the plant propagation secret that replaces chemical rooting hormones entirely, the belief we never questioned. Once you accept that plants survived without chemicals, the next question becomes unavoidable: why do we believe we need them now? Somewhere along the way, gardening stopped being about understanding plants and started being about buying solutions. Rooting hormones became a default step, not because gardeners tested alternatives, but because repetition turned advice into belief. When something fails, the assumption isn't "I misunderstood the plant." It's "I didn't use the right product." This belief quietly removes responsibility from knowledge and hands it over to packaging. The result? Gardeners who follow instructions perfectly but never truly learn why roots form in the first place. And when understanding disappears, failure becomes common. What chemicals actually do? To break that belief, we need to understand what chemical rooting hormones really do and what they don't. Most of these products are synthetic versions of auxins, hormones plants already produce naturally. They don't create roots from nothing. They simply stimulate a reaction at the cut surface. The problem is that stimulation is not the same as development. Forced roots often form quickly but lack depth and resilience. Many cuttings survive just long enough to give hope, then collapse weeks later. That failure isn't bad luck, it's biology. Roots grown under pressure are weaker than roots grown by necessity. And this leads us to something far more important than chemicals themselves: the power already inside the plant. Here's the part most gardeners never hear: plants don't need to be taught how to grow roots. They already know. Inside every healthy cutting is a complete survival system. When a plant is cut, it doesn't see damage. It sees a decision point. Either it grows new roots or it dies. That moment triggers internal hormone redistribution, energy concentration, and cellular reprogramming. This is not theory, it's how plants have survived extinction events, climate shifts, and environmental disasters. Chemical hormones try to imitate this process, but imitation will never outperform the original design. The real question isn't, what should I add? It's, how do I activate what's already there? Nature's gentle helpers. Once you understand that activation matters more than addition, natural rooting helpers suddenly make sense. Aloe vera doesn't force roots, it protects the cutting while it activates itself. Willow water doesn't inject hormones. It mirrors what plants already recognize as familiar signals. Honey and cinnamon don't grow roots at all. They simply remove the obstacles that cause failure, like rot and infection. These methods succeed not because they are magical, but because they respect the plant's internal intelligence. They don't rush the process. They support it. And this leads directly to the real secret most people completely overlook. The real secret: controlled stress. The most powerful propagation trigger is not a substance. It's stress-controlled, gentle, intentional stress. When light is reduced, when moisture is balanced, when leaves are limited, the plant redirects energy downward. This is survival logic, not gardening trickery. Proper node selection, slight stem wounding, oxygen-rich media, and humidity balance all work together to tell the plant one message. Adapt now. Chemical hormones try to skip this message. Nature never does. And plants that respond naturally don't just root, they establish. Putting it all together. When you combine everything healthy parent plants, correct cuts, natural protection, proper stress, and patience, you get a propagation method that doesn't depend on luck. It depends on understanding. Cuttings root when conditions make rooting the smartest option. This is why natural propagation may take longer, but almost always produces stronger plants. Speed creates excitement. Strength creates longevity. And once you experience this difference, it becomes impossible to unsee. Why this knowledge is hidden? So why isn't this taught everywhere? Because knowledge doesn't sell as well as products? A gardener who understands plants doesn't need many purchases. A confused gardener does. Modern gardening culture rewards fast results and repeat buying, not deep understanding. Natural methods don't come with labels or guarantees, but they work quietly, consistently, and reliably. This knowledge was never lost. It was simply buried under marketing. What happens when you stop forcing roots? Once gardeners stop forcing roots and start allowing them, something unexpected happens. The failure rate drops dramatically. Cuttings that once rotted or stalled suddenly begin to root with confidence. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily and correctly. These plants don't just survive transplantation. They adapt to it. Their roots grow outward instead of circling. They search, explore, and connect with soil life. This is the difference between a plant that was pushed into growth and one that chose growth. When roots form naturally, they communicate better with microbes, absorb nutrients efficiently, and anchor the plant more securely. This is why naturally propagated plants often handle heat, drought, and stress far better than chemically forced ones. Gardeners often assume success means how fast roots appear. But nature measures success differently. Nature cares about permanence, not speed. And once you see how strong these naturally rooted plants become, it becomes clear forcing roots was never helping. It was only hiding the real problem. Misunderstanding how plants make decisions. Never told you strong closing. 200 words. Once you understand how plants truly form roots, one realization becomes impossible to ignore. The secret was never missing. It was never complicated. And it was never locked away. It was simply overshadowed. Overshadowed by bottles promising speed. Overshadowed by shortcuts marketed as solutions. Overshadowed by the idea that nature needs fixing. But nature never needed fixing. It needed patience and understanding. Plants don't grow roots because we tell them to. They grow roots because survival demands it. When the right conditions are present, rooting is not optional, it is inevitable. This is why forests regenerate without help. This is why fallen branches become trees. And this is why gardeners who stop forcing growth start seeing consistent success. Not because they added more, but because they interfered less. Chemical rooting hormones didn't make gardeners better, they made them dependent. Natural propagation makes gardeners confident. Once you see a cutting root on its own, strongly and naturally, you stop fearing failure. You stop chasing products. You start trusting biology. And that is the real propagation secret. Roots don't come from bottles. They come from understanding how life chooses to continue.